London, late December 2025. While the world fixes its eyes on the twinkling lights of Christmas trees and the joyous melodies of the holiday season, a storm is brewing behind the fortified stone walls of the Sandringham estate. This is a storm far more piercing than the biting cold of the British winter. You see them smiling for the cameras. You see them waving to the crowds at Street Mary Magdalene Church. But do not let that polished exterior fool you. The truth is, the British monarchy is shaking at its very foundation. We are witnessing an unprecedented face-to-face clash between King Charles III and his heir, Prince William. And at the center of this hurricane lies a deeply guarded secret, the truth about Catherine's health. Imagine the traditional Christmas feast at Sandringham. It is a ritual that has stood for over a century. Every silver fork, every flickering candle represents continuity, legacy, and the unshakable power of the Windsor bloodline. But this year, that atmosphere has been stained by heated arguments echoing from the king's private study. Palace insiders, those who have served the royals for decades, describe this as a collision of eras. On one side, you have King Charles, the aging warrior, desperately trying to protect the symbols and the stability of the throne at any cost. On the other side is William, a father, a husband, and a future king who is willing to burn the old protocols to the ground to protect what matters most, his family. Why has William chosen to be absent from this traditional lunch for 3 consecutive years? Is it truly a constructive divergence as Buckingham Palace tries to tell the public? Or is it a silent declaration of war? The answer does not lie in charity schedules. It lies in Kate's health secret, a secret the palace swore to protect at all costs, yet its heavy presence is chilling every corridor in Sandringham. To our loyal American audience, you have followed this family long enough to know one thing. In the world of royalty, absence speaks louder than presence. When Kate decides not to show up at the king's table, she isn't just missing a meal. She and William are setting a new order. An order where compassion and the raw truth are more important than empty ceremonies. But what is the price of that truth? And why does King Charles feel so deeply betrayed when his own son is trying to reset the monarchy in a way he never imagined? Kate's health secret is not just a medical diagnosis. It is a weapon that is completely changing the royal chessboard. In the next part, we will peel back the layers of the harsh reality behind those closed doors, where the private tears of the princess are forcing the most powerful man in Britain to face a devastating fact. His legacy may never be the same again. Don't look away, because this is only the beginning of the darkest chapter in the modern history of the House of Windsor. The tension between a father and a son is a narrative as old as time itself. But when that father wears a crown, and the son carries the weight of the future on his shoulders, the stakes transcend personal feelings. They become a battle for the very soul and survival of a nation. To truly understand why Prince William has chosen to defy King Charles III so decisively this Christmas, we must delve into the silent war of ideologies currently fracturing the corridors of Buckingham Palace. This is not just a family spat. It is a collision between 2 irreconcilable visions of the monarchy. For King Charles III, the monarchy is like a sacred, ancient oak tree with roots buried deep in the soil of history. He is a firm believer in the presence, a traditionalist royal concept which dictates that the sovereign and his family must be visible at every gala, every ceremonial lunch, and every grand ritual. To Charles, these traditions are the mystical glue that holds the institution together in the public's imagination. He views this constant presence not as a choice, but as an unshakable divine duty. He believes that if the monarchy stops performing its ancient rituals, it loses its reason to exist. However, Prince William, representing a generation that views the crown through a lens of skepticism and modern reality, sees things very differently. He looks at a monarchy that is becoming top-heavy, decorative, and dangerously detached from a world struggling through unprecedented economic and social crises. Palace insiders have whispered about a shattering confrontation that took place within the king's private study at Sandringham just weeks before Christmas Eve. In a room thick with the scent of aged leather, sandalwood, and the gravity of centuries, Charles insisted on a full royal display. He demanded a united front at the traditional Christmas lunch to project an image of strength and stability, especially as he continues his own grueling battle with cancer. William's response, however, was icy, resolute, and fundamentally challenging. According to high-level sources, William looked his father in the eye and delivered a line that sent shockwaves through the royal household. "People don't connect with hollow titles anymore, Pa. They connect with action and genuine empathy." William is not merely a rebel, he is a cold-eyed strategist. He understands that spending thousands of pounds on a lavish royal banquet, while millions of families across the UK and America are forced to choose between heating their homes and eating a meal, is a public relations catastrophe. He views every gilded party and empty ceremony as another nail in the coffin of the monarchy's future relevance. But there is a darker, more intimate layer to this clash. It is about Catherine. While the king demanded business as usual, William saw a wife who remained incredibly fragile after a year of brutal medical treatments. He saw a woman who had quietly reset the very soul of the Wales family during her long and painful recovery. The health secret we have heard whispered is not just a medical diagnosis on a piece of paper. It is the realization of the devastating toll the palace machine takes on the human heart. William witnessed firsthand what this emotional meat grinder did to his mother, Princess Diana. He saw the permanent psychological scars it left on his brother, Harry. And this Christmas, William drew a hard line in the Norfolk sand. He refused to let Catherine be used as a ceremonial prop, a decorative piece in a staged display of unity that he believes has lost its soul and its meaning. To our loyal American viewers who prize independence, privacy, and the courage to break free from the chains of the past, this is the moment William truly stood his ground as the leader of his own family. He didn't just skip a lunch. He challenged the king's fundamental vision of what it means to serve in the 21st century. He chose the invisible families struggling in the shadows over the invited elite inside the palace walls. He chose the raw sincerity of a community center over the staged opulence of Sandringham House. Yet, that choice has left King Charles isolated and bitter in his own home, questioning if the heir he spent a lifetime training is now the very man who will lead the revolution to dismantle his legacy. This is no longer a simple family rift. It is a fight for the survival of the House of Windsor. It is time to pull back the velvet curtain on what Buckingham Palace has carefully labeled with vague medical terms. For months, the global public has been fed a steady diet of brief updates, words like preventative chemotherapy and good progress. But behind the scenes, the reality of Catherine's recovery, what we call the remission truth, carries a far more devastating weight than anything broadcast on the nightly news. Insider sources reveal that this remission isn't just physical, it is an emotional remission from the suffocating pressures of the crown. Kate has delivered a final ultimatum to the institution. She will never again return to being a puppet for empty royal ceremonies. The fuse was lit by a private letter Catherine sent to King Charles in late November. This was not a standard note of well wishes between a daughter-in-law and her father-in-law. Those who have glimpsed the drafts describe it as a manifesto of freedom. In it, Kate was startlingly blunt. She shared how her battle with cancer had fundamentally reordered her values. She wrote about the long, dark nights facing her own mortality, moments where the weight of a crown and the prestige of a title felt utterly meaningless compared to the laughter of George, Charlotte, and Louis. She declared that her health, both physical and psychological, is now her absolute priority. She stated clearly that she would not appear at Sandringham merely to serve as window dressing for a staged family photo if it meant exhausting her precious reserves of strength. This letter is the precise reason King Charles feels so betrayed. For a 77-year-old monarch who spent his entire life adhering to the rigid, unyielding rules of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, Kate's move felt like a constitutional strike against the monarchy itself. Charles views her absence from the Christmas lunch as a collapse of royal discipline. He fears that if the brightest star of the dynasty can simply choose which duties to perform and which to ignore, the entire structure of the House of Windsor will begin to crumble. The clash between Charles and William, which we explored earlier, erupted directly from the fallout of this letter. William stood by his wife with a fierce, protective intensity, reportedly telling the king, "Catherine has sacrificed enough. From now on, she lives her life her way, not the palace's way." But the true health secret lies in a detail the palace is terrified to admit. Kate is executing a strategic reset of the monarchy from the inside out. By refusing to attend the Sandringham lunch and choosing instead to serve at the Hope Meadow Community Center, Kate sent a razor-sharp message. She is proving that true power lies in empathy and direct service, not in gilded banquets behind locked doors. Her remission has granted her a new kind of moral authority, a power that even King Charles, with all his majesty, cannot control. To our American audience, who prize the strength of a woman protecting her home and the courage to speak truth to power, can you see the parallels? Kate is not just fighting an illness, she is fighting a system that wants to turn her into an emotionless icon. Her health secret is the weapon William is using to carry out his revolution for a leaner, more human monarchy. When Kate is absent from the king's table, she is redrawing the map of the future. It is a future where the crown must serve the people, rather than demanding people sacrifice their souls for the crown. But where does this defiance lead? As the king begins to whisper about replacing William's role in key ceremonies, the war for the throne has entered a stage from which there is no turning back. As the grand lights of the banquet hall at Sandringham House began to dim, the silence that followed did not carry the peace of the holiday season. Instead, it deepened the sting of a king rejected. King Charles III, a man who spent more than half a century waiting in the shadow of the throne, is now facing a devastating reality. His only heir is quietly constructing a separate dynasty, a shadow monarchy operating entirely outside the control of Buckingham Palace. You must understand that in the world of absolute power, nothing is more terrifying than isolation. And Charles, with the instincts of a king forged by ancient rituals, has begun to execute a move no one expected, a plan to re-establish order on the Windsor chessboard. Sources from the king's closest constitutional advisors reveal that the monarch has initiated secret discussions about shifting the center of royal gravity. If William and Catherine choose to stand outside traditional ceremonies, Charles will prove to them that the crown can still shine brilliantly without their presence. This is the sophisticated replacement strategy. Charles is significantly increasing the visibility of Princess Anne and Prince Edward members, who represent absolute loyalty and a tireless, unpretentious work ethic. This is not merely about filling empty spots on the palace balcony during major events. It is a razor-sharp political message sent directly to William. No one is indispensable, not even the Prince of Wales. But the most lethal and ruthless weapon Charles holds is how he coordinates the flow of information regarding Catherine's health secret to the public. While William fiercely protects his wife's privacy, the king's media strategists are quietly considering the weaponization of public sympathy. Do you see the danger here? If the palace begins to leak information suggesting that Kate's absence is not an act of community service, but rather because she cannot handle the pressure of royal protocols, then William's entire effort to modernize the monarchy will be reframed as a weakness. Charles is forcing William into a corner. Either return to the old rituals, or let the world believe that the Princess of Wales has truly buckled under the crushing weight of the crown. To our American audience who have a sharp intuition for power struggles within business empires and great dynasties, you will recognize this as the freezing out tactic. Charles is not punishing William with public reprimands. He is punishing him by shifting attention, favor, and resources toward those who know their place. However, William is not a man easily subdued. He knows his power lies in the support of the younger generation and the modern values he and Catherine represent. Kate's health secret is no longer just a medical file. It has become the most important piece on the board. When the king begins to publicly praise the dedication of other royals, it is a silent slap in the face to his heir. This war is not just happening at Sandringham, it is happening in every word of the press releases and every camera angle. Charles wants to assert that the crown is a heritage embodiment, while William wants it to be an agile service. But as these two concepts collide, the person suffering the most is Catherine, the one forced to use her own fragile health as a shield for her husband's revolution. This is no longer about a family lunch. It is about who will survive the freezing temperatures of the House of Windsor. While the king sat surrounded by history at Sandringham, Catherine sat surrounded by humanity at Hope Meadow. This is the image that has haunted the halls of Buckingham Palace and ignited the latest, most bitter chapter of the royal clash. You have to understand the optics of power. For centuries, the British monarchy has derived its authority from being above the people, a mystical, distant institution. But Catherine, fueled by her own battle with illness and a newfound clarity of purpose, has shattered that glass ceiling. She is no longer just a member of the family. She is becoming a shadow queen, wielding a brand of soft power that King Charles III simply cannot compete with. This is the health secret in its most potent form. The realization that Kate's vulnerability has become her greatest strength. Palace insiders describe a king who is deeply conflicted. On one hand, Charles has privately expressed admiration for Catherine's humanitarian instincts, even calling her a beacon of unity in internal briefings. But on the other hand, as a monarch, he is terrified. He knows that every time Catherine connects with a family struggling with the cost of living, every time she serves a meal with her own hands while the king sits behind gilded doors, she makes the traditional, ceremonial side of the monarchy look cold and irrelevant. The clash between William and Charles is not just about a Christmas lunch. It is a battle over the source of authority. Charles believes the authority comes from the throne. William and Catherine believe it comes from the heart. For our American audience, who have always admired the people's Princess Diana, you can see history repeating itself, but with a strategic twist. Catherine is not the tragic figure Diana was. She is a disciplined, tactical reformer. She used her Invisible Families campaign to bridge the gap between royal privilege and public pain. By choosing the Hope Meadow Community Center over the Sandringham Grand Hall, she executed a tactical checkmate. She proved that she doesn't need the king's table to be relevant. She doesn't need the palace machine to have an impact. She is building a legacy that is independent of the crown's ancient rituals, and that is a terrifying prospect for a king who values legacy above all else. The tension has reached a boiling point because Catherine's actions are forcing a moral audit of the entire institution. If the most popular and respected member of the family is choosing service over ceremony, what does that say about the members who stay behind? The king's strategy to freeze out William by elevating Princess Anne and Prince Edward is failing because it doesn't address the emotional void that Catherine is filling. Charles is playing a game of numbers and protocols, while Catherine is playing a game of souls and stories. This is the moment the remission truth became a public revolution. Catherine isn't just recovering from cancer. She is recovering from the old ways of the monarchy. She is resetting the expectations of what a queen should be. But as her influence grows, so does the risk. The king's aides are increasingly concerned that the Wales brand is now overshadowing the crown brand. In the world of high-stakes power, there can only be one sun in the sky. As Catherine's light continues to grow brighter through her quiet defiance and emotional diplomacy, the shadows over King Charles's reign are only growing longer. The clash has moved beyond a family disagreement. It has become a fight for who defines the future of Britain. In the world of the British monarchy, information is the only currency that matters. And right now, the exchange rate is deadly. As we move deeper into the winter of 2025, a secondary war has erupted not in the grand halls of Sandringham, but in the newsrooms of London and New York. This is the Battle of the Leaks, a strategic media crossfire where Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace are fighting for the hearts and minds of the public. The health secret of Princess Catherine has become the nuclear option in this conflict. You have to realize that every headline you read is a calculated move on a chessboard. When a story breaks about a royal rift, it isn't accidental. It is a weaponized narrative designed to force the other side into submission. King Charles's media machine, refined over decades of crisis management, has been working overtime to frame William and Catherine's absence as a generational divergence. They want you to believe that this is a peaceful evolution. But behind the scenes, the leaks are getting uglier. Anonymous senior courtiers have begun whispering to the press about William's stubbornness and Catherine's unpredictability. These are not just insults, they are tactical strikes. By painting the Waleses as difficult or emotionally unstable due to Catherine's health battle, the old guard is trying to undermine William's authority. They are trying to tell the world that the heritage monarchy of Charles is the only safe pair of hands, while the modern monarchy of William is a risky, unstable gamble. But William, fueled by a fierce, protective instinct for his wife, has launched a counteroffensive. Kensington Palace has begun bypassing traditional royal reporters altogether, leaning into a digital-first strategy that connects directly with you, the global audience. They are releasing intimate, behind-the-scenes glimpses of Catherine's recovery and her work at community centers like Hope Meadow. This is narrative warfare at its most sophisticated. While the King's team relies on formal statements and authorized biographies, William and Catherine are building an emotional bond that doesn't need a middleman. They are proving that the health secret isn't a sign of weakness, but a catalyst for a more transparent, honest brand of royalty. To our American viewers, who understand the power of a well-crafted image, you can see the desperation in the King's camp. Charles is 77, and he is fighting a war on two fronts, against his own illness and against the fading relevance of his traditions. The remission truth that Catherine holds is so powerful because it represents the humanization of the crown. When Kate chooses to be a mother and a healer over being a ceremonial statue, she exposes the coldness of the old system. The King's aides are terrified that the public is no longer interested in the ritual. They are interested in the reality. The clash reached a fever pitch when a leaked briefing suggested that the King was considering a restructuring of the royal foundation, William's pride and joy. This was a clear shot across the bow. It was Charles saying, "If you don't play by my rules at Sandringham, I will take away your resources." But the response from William was a deafening silence, followed by a surge in Catherine's public approval ratings. The health secret has granted the Waleses a moral immunity. The public will not tolerate an aging king bullying a woman recovering from cancer. Charles is finding that his traditional weapons of protocol and hierarchy are useless against Catherine's weapon of soft power. In the House of Windsor, the old rules of engagement have been shredded, and the new ones are being written in the tears and triumphs of a princess who refused to stay in the shadows. In the high-stakes theater of the British monarchy, what you don't say is often more explosive than what you do. As the winter of 2025 deepens, Prince William has deployed a weapon that is driving the old guard at Buckingham Palace into a state of frantic uncertainty: the weaponization of silence. You have to understand the psychology of King Charles III. He is a man who craves affirmation. He wants the world to see the continuity of his reign through shared public rituals. But by maintaining a disciplined, icy silence and refusing to explain his absence from the traditional royal lunch, William has created a tactical vacuum. He is letting the king's own anxieties and the public's imagination fill that void. This is psychological warfare at its most refined. Palace aides who have observed the king in recent weeks describe a monarch who is increasingly unsettled by this lack of communication. While Charles issues statements and pursues heritage embodiment, William's digital fortress at Kensington Palace remains silent on the family drama, focusing instead on the tangible results of Catherine's work. This silence is not a sign of weakness. It is a display of ultimate control. William is showing his father that he no longer needs the king's permission to define his own narrative. For our American audience, who understand that true power often moves in the shadows, you can see the brilliance of this move. By not arguing, William is winning. He is making the king's insistence on protocol look like the desperate clamor of a bygone era. This clash is written all over their public appearances if you know how to read the signs, what we call the physiognomy of power. Look closely at the king's recent broadcasts. You will see a tightened jaw, a restless fidgeting with his signet ring, and eyes that seem to be searching for an approval that is no longer guaranteed. Contrast this with Prince William's resolute, unblinking stare during his community engagements. William's body language screams the future, while Charles's posture reflects the heavy, exhausting weight of the past. The king is obsessed with his legacy, but he is realizing that his legacy is being edited in real time by a son who is simply refusing to play the game by the old rules. The health secret of Catherine is the shield that makes this silence possible. Because Catherine is in recovery, the public grants the Wales family a privacy buffer that the king cannot breach without appearing cruel. William is using this buffer to restructure the entire royal calendar. He is proving that the monarchy can function as a remote institution, one that connects through impact rather than proximity. The king's strategy of freezing out William is backfiring because you cannot freeze out someone who has already moved into a different climate. Charles is finding himself in an analog palace, while William and Catherine are operating in a digital era. The king's obsession with ceremonial unity is being exposed as a vanity project, while William's focus on results is being hailed as true leadership. The moral authority has crossed the Norfolk border, leaving the king with the crown, but the prince with the people. This is the ultimate checkmate of the soul. The silence from Kensington Palace is deafening, and it is a sound that King Charles III simply does not know how to silence. In the world of absolute power, there is no leash shorter than the one made of gold. As we move into the final months of 2025, the clash between King Charles III and Prince William has entered its most pragmatic and brutal phase: financial warfare. You must understand that while titles are inherited, the money that sustains the royal lifestyle is controlled with an iron fist. King Charles, as the sovereign, holds the keys to the sovereign grant, the massive taxpayer-funded pot that pays for official travel, palace maintenance, and the working royal staff. But William, as the Duke of Cornwall, sits on a private billion-dollar empire. This is the battle of the duchies, and it is here that the king is attempting to exert his final authority over a son who refuses to obey. Palace insiders reveal that the king has begun a strategic audit of all royal expenses, specifically targeting the security and travel costs associated with Catherine's private initiatives. This is a cold-blooded move. By questioning the public funding used for Catherine's visits to places like Hope Meadow, which the king's team argues are private charitable choices rather than official state duties, Charles is trying to place a financial chokehold on the EVA, Wales's modern revolution. He is sending a clear message to William. If you want to operate outside the traditional system, you will have to pay for it out of your own pocket. This isn't just about budgeting. It is about treating the future king as a subsidized employee rather than a partner in power. But Charles may have underestimated the sheer scale of the financial independence William has built. The Duchy of Cornwall, which William inherited upon his father's accession, generates tens of millions of dollars in annual profit. William is using this private wealth to fund a shadow civil service, a dedicated team of experts and PR strategists who report only to him and Catherine. This is why the health secret remains so well guarded. William doesn't need to rely on the king's doctors or the king's security detail if he doesn't want to. He is building a self-sustaining monarchy within a monarchy. For our American audience, who understand that money is the ultimate form of leverage, you can see that William is effectively buying his family's freedom from the king's control. The health secret of Catherine is once again the pivot point in this financial chess game. The king's aides have subtly suggested that the high cost of Catherine's specialized medical security and private recovery protocols is a burden on the royal estate. This is a dangerous narrative to leak. It is a calculated attempt to make William look extravagant, while the king promotes a slimmed-down monarchy. But William has countered by transparently funding these costs through the Duchy of Cornwall, effectively neutralizing the king's attack. He is telling his father, "I don't need your money to protect my wife." The tension reached a boiling point during a recent meeting of the royal trustees, where the king reportedly questioned the long-term viability of William's homewards project, citing its high administrative costs. William's response was a masterclass in modern defiance. He didn't argue for the king's approval. He simply increased his private investment in the project. This is the sovereignty of the purse in action. Charles is fighting with the tools of a traditional monarch, but William is fighting with the tools of a modern CEO. The king is realizing that you cannot control a man who has his own bank account and his own vision. The financial rift at Sandringham is no longer about who pays for lunch, it's about who owns the future of the crown. As the dust begins to settle on the 2025 holiday season, a chilling truth has emerged from the fog of Sandringham. The British public, and indeed the global audience, has already made its choice. This is the constitutional breaking point. For centuries, the monarchy has relied on the consent of the governed, a fragile contract that says the people will support the crown as long as the crown reflects their values. But right now, that contract is being torn up. While King Charles III remains the legal sovereign, Prince William and Catherine have become the emotional sovereigns. You can feel the shift in every poll, every social media trend, and every conversation on the streets of London and the suburbs of America. The health secret of Catherine has not just changed her life, it has acted as a catalyst, revealing that the old ways of the palace are no longer fit for a world that demands authenticity over artifice. Palace insiders describe a king who is watching his approval ratings with a mixture of bewilderment and resentment. Charles, who spent his life preparing for this role, is finding that the grandeur he so prizes is being viewed as coldness by a public that is increasingly protective of the Princess of Wales. The Battle of the Duchies we discussed earlier has proven that money can buy staff and security, but it cannot buy the moral mandate. William's decision to prioritize Catherine's recovery over the king's ceremonial lunch has been hailed as a masterclass in modern leadership. For our American audience, who value the self-made spirit and the protection of the family unit, William is no longer seen as a prince waiting in line. He is seen as a man who has already taken the throne of public opinion. But what does this mean for the health secret? The truth is that Catherine's condition has become a mirror for the monarchy's own health. If the institution cannot protect its most vulnerable and beloved member without subjecting her to the palace machine, then the public begins to ask, what is the point of the institution? This is why the clash between father and son has reached a breaking point. Charles sees the crown as a sacred object that must be served. William sees the crown as a functional tool that must serve. The king's insistence on heritage embodiment is clashing with William's agile service in a way that suggests only one can survive. The tension has reached such a pitch that constitutional scholars are now debating the dual monarchy theory, the idea that Britain is currently being governed by two separate royal houses with two separate agendas. There is the House of Charles, focused on history, ritual, and the preservation of the old guard. And there is the House of William, focused on transparency, social impact, and the protection of the human element. The remission truth that Catherine represents is the final nail in the coffin of the never complain, never explain era. By choosing to be honest about her struggle and firm about her boundaries, Catherine has effectively ended the Victorian era of the monarchy. The king is realizing that his power is purely symbolic, while William's power is operational and emotional. This is the most dangerous position for a monarch to be in. When the heir is more popular, more modern, and more morally aligned with the public than the king, the reign of the sovereign becomes a mere waiting room for the future. Catherine's health secret was the spark that ignited this fire, but the underlying fuel was years of generational friction and a desperate need for change. In the cold light of 2025, the House of Windsor is no longer a united front. It is a house divided, and as history has shown us time and again, a house divided against itself cannot stand. The final confrontation isn't coming. It is already here, and it is being fought in the quiet recovery rooms and community centers where the future is being born. As the winter sun finally sets over the frost-covered fields of Sandringham, the longest and most turbulent Christmas in modern royal history comes to a close. But as the curtains are drawn in the grand dining rooms, the House of Windsor is no longer the institution it was just weeks ago. The clash between King Charles III and Prince William did not end in a shattered crown or a public exile. Instead, it ended in a profound, albeit painful, transformation. The health secret of Catherine, which began as a source of terror and secrecy, has ultimately become the foundation of a new kind of royalty. You are witnessing the birth of a monarchy that is no longer defined by the distance of the throne, but by the depth of its connection to the people. In a rare, quiet moment recorded by palace insiders on the evening of December 25th, King Charles reportedly looked at his son and daughter-in-law and realized that his battle to preserve the old ways was over. The king, in a gesture of ultimate stewardship, has begun to accept that the heritage embodiment he spent his life protecting must now give way to William's agile service. The remission truth is that Catherine has taught the monarchy how to be human again. By choosing to prioritize her recovery and her children over the hollow rituals of the past, she has given the crown a heart. She has proven that the most important seat is not at a gilded banquet table, but at the side of those who are struggling. For our American audience, who have followed this journey with such fierce loyalty and concern, the verdict is clear. William and Catherine have won the war for the soul of the monarchy. They didn't do it through rebellion, but through a dignified, unwavering commitment to a better way of leading. The king's freezing-out tactic failed because the warmth of Catherine's empathy was more powerful than the coldness of palace protocol. The financial warfare ended in a stalemate because the public's love is a currency that cannot be audited. The House of Windsor has evolved, not because it wanted to, but because it had to, guided by the quiet strength of a woman who refused to let her spirit be crushed by a crown. The health secret is no longer a burden, it is a badge of honor. It is a reminder that even behind palace walls there is pain, there is struggle, and there is a desperate need for privacy and love. As 2025 draws to a close, we see a royal family that is more aligned than it has been in years, not because they agree on everything, but because they have finally agreed on what matters most. The king plays the game of history, but the prince and princess are playing the game of the future. And in that future, the monarchy is not a museum of the past, but a living, breathing force for good. This is the end of the Sandringham rift, but it is only the beginning of the Wales era. As Catherine continues her journey of healing and service, she carries with her the hopes of a nation and a world that has seen her true strength. The crown is heavy, but for the first time in a generation, it is being carried by those who understand that its true weight is measured in the lives it touches. The House of Windsor survives, not through the strength of its stones, but through the resilience of its heart. And as we look toward 2026, we see a monarchy that has finally found its way home.